The surface of the ocean hides a completely different world below that is out of sight, out of sight, out of sight, and out of mind for all of us, nearly all of us. Luckily, I grew up in Jamaica and had parents who were very much outdoor people, and they loved the outdoors. They were farmers, and they loved fishing. So growing up in Jamaica, it was very inspirational for me at a very early age, and much of my childhood was spent in or on the water, and little did I know it had a profound effect on what I was going to do later. And luckily, my mother was an ardent naturalist too, and quite a good artist. And so, from a very early age, I fell in love with things marine, and followed kind of their passion too, which was catching a fish that was probably one of the most beautiful animals I've ever met, called the blue marlin. This really early introduction to unreachable animals, except catching them on the end of a line, fired a whole string of questions, and biological questions, artistic questions that I wanted to answer. And so it inspired me right through my early life to be a painter. But this culminated in my mid-teens in a series of paintings in illustrating the story of Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea. Now, most of you have heard the story, read the story. You probably had it because it was prescribed reading at school. But the blue marlin, as much as I loved it, was not the focus of my academic career when I went to university to study marine sciences. And I studied diminutive little fish like herrings and sardines and jacks and mackerels, but I had access to the big predators during the marlin tournaments in Jamaica. And so as I grew up and became a professional scientist and worked for several years at university, my hobby became my career. And what a good thing that turned out to be, eh? And so I needed to learn more about these animals that I was going to paint. And I based my authenticity on first-hand knowledge, the experience of getting into their realm, into their ocean, learning about their behavior, their anatomy, their physiology, to paint them authentically. And this is where 30 years ago, I made this decision to invest all that time and effort into the open ocean and get close to nature. So after many years of doing this, I decided to leave academia, and I wanted to follow these guys, the billfishes, the elusive fish of the open ocean that you cannot see in captivity, the sailfish, as you see here. These animals you could only access through diving with them. Here's a mako shark, the animal which is the mascot for this very university we're sitting at, the most beautiful animal. And the tiger shark, which of course many people fear, but I came to learn was one of the most smart, intelligent, and calculating animals that you could ever hope to meet. So that was my introduction. Let's pursue this business about billfish just for a second, because it plays such a big part of my life. Here's a black marlin. The only way you could access an animal like this was at the end of a line, as you can see here. This one actually has a tag. But I really wanted to focus on them, on their coloration, their changes, and their behavior. And so I embarked for 10 years on a way to dive with them and tease them into your vicinity, because you can't just jump into the middle of the open ocean and expect one to swim by. And there was nobody else doing this. And so the challenge was to get close to these guys. And here's a blue marlin eating a live bait. Here is the same blue marlin, color changed completely into pastels, as you can see. Here's a sailfish, completely jet black. Why is it black? All these questions are coming up. When they jump, they look blue and silver like this. They're pastels. So what is the meaning of all this behavior, these color changes? And it changed the way I paint. I was coming up with a lot more authentic art, and the whole career in art was just progressing really well. 20 years ago, I joined Nova Southeastern University, the Oceanographic Center. I've been working with Professor Mahmoud Shivji for now 20 years on a variety of different projects, but most of them revolve around sharks. Now, sharks, as you know, are a very successful group of animals. They've been on this planet for over 400 million years. They are ecologically very significant. They have expanded into 500 different species around, filling every niche in the aquatic environment on this planet because of their radial expansion, taking over niches that were made vacant by a multiplicity of extinctions that have taken place in that time. So here's a very successful group about which we knew little. And talk about turning unknowns into knowns. Here was an opportunity to really make a difference. And so we collaborated on a variety of different projects about which I'm going to start to tell you. Because as you know, around the world, sharks are facing all kinds of overexploitation and fishing that is just totally, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just unsustainable because of their biology. If you understand their biology, they're long-lived, slow-growing animals, and if you a bit like human beings, and if you whack them too hard, their ability to replace themselves is severely affected. You end up with scenes like this. So let's focus on tiger sharks. And in Bermuda, where there are a lot of tiger sharks, we learned, you have an opportunity to study them. And we worked with another group in Bermuda called the Bermuda Shark Project, tagged over 50 animals, and with these spot tags. And here's new technology allowing you to follow what is an oceanic animal for long periods of time, as we're about to discover, and learn more about its life history, and turn unknowns into knowns. So here's a track of one of these tiger sharks that we tagged, called Harry Lindo. And this tag is attached to the dorsal fin of the shark, so it's not ever going to come off. And the duration of the track is limited by battery life. And here you can see the kind of cyclical nature of this track. It's spending a lot of time in the wintertime in the archipelagos of the Caribbean, summertime spent in the open ocean. Well, guess what? There's no other animal that spends half of its life in the deep ocean, about 10,000 feet deep, and the other half of its year in a shallow reef environment, 10 feet deep. There's nothing else that does this. So how is this animal adapted to this life history, and why is it taking these big meanders into the open ocean, which are they are really desert-like? So what's the value of this research work? Why are we doing this, people ask. Here's a nice tiger shark in front of a bunch of divers. The picture was taken by a very famous photographer. We were on the expedition together, and we paid a lot of money to go and see this tiger shark alive. Well, there are lots of other people like us doing the same thing. And this, what we call shark ecotourism, develops tens of millions of dollars a year for the Bahamas every year without killing a single shark. Very important activity. At the same time, back in the early 2000s when we were doing this work, the Chinese were going to get into the Bahamas and applied for permits to catch sharks. This research work showed how important the archipelago is to the life history of not only tiger sharks, but lemons and Caribbean reef sharks, bull sharks, and blacktips, all the other species that are involved. And we met with 4 different ministers in January of 2011 and said, you've got to protect these sharks. And based on our science, our data, they made a decision in July, that's just 5 months later, 2011, that the archipelago is going to be a shark sanctuary, 250,000 miles of shark sanctuary. This is the value of the research work that we've done here. And of course, today, shark ecotourism is thriving, and not a single shark is killed. So let's talk about another species, the mako. Again, I mention it because it's relevant to this university because it's our mascot here. And here's a mako shark being revived by me in Mexico after the same instrument's been placed on the dorsal fin called a spot tag. What does this allow us to do? Every time that fin cuts the surface, it talks to a satellite and says, here I am. Well, makos, or we didn't know this, happen to talk to satellites more than any other shark. So we get tons of data. And we can follow them in real time. They'll give a spot, an identification of where they are to within 2 meters. So it's very accurate. Some of these makos tracked for 2.5, 3 years. And I'm going to show you one now called Tough Guy, appropriately named. That's the same shark that you just saw in the picture. He did nearly 10,000 miles in less than a year. And the battery probably died at that point when the track stopped reporting. But an unintended result of all of this research work, and we tagged 106 mako sharks in the 8 years that we did this, 30% of them were caught and killed. How do we know this? Because the tags end up on land. And so we are able, because remember how accurate they are, we are able to track down the tags, find out who killed the shark, why they killed the shark, what kind of gear the shark was caught on, and discovered that this very high rate of mortality was 10 times higher than any previous rate of mortality estimated by NOAA. That's totally unsustainable. So the alarm bells went off, and NOAA changed all the regulations immediately. They increased the minimum size of the mako sharks that could be killed, and they mandated live release of those sharks if you're a commercial fisherman and the shark is alive on a haulback. So those regulations had a very good effect. In terms of overfishing, the bluefin tuna, everybody knows about them. They've been around for a long time. They're a very modern fish, evolutionary speaking. They are a hot-blooded, smart animal that can penetrate cold water and maintain its body temperature at 24 degrees centigrade, and allows them to be the perfect predator. People think sharks are great predators, killer whales are great predators, which they are in their own right, but the bluefin tuna has evolved to swim in all sorts of different environments and feed and grow very large. Here's an animal now that is down to about 10% of its pre-exploitation level. It's become very political on both sides of the Atlantic where there are big populations. There's ranching of tunas nowadays where they catch them and they raise them and feed them and then sell them to the market when the market is high. And individual fish can sell for up to $1 million for one fish. They've become the most valuable animal on the planet. There are regulated fisheries around the world, but this is a fish that will probably cease to exist soon just because it's so valuable. So let's take a look at billfishes, my favorite animals. Here, I took this picture in Panama in 25. This is a 1,200-pound black marlin. It's this sort of iconic shot of what is the catch and release fishery that has taken, has really grown exponentially in the last 30 years, 40 years, I would say. It spread from America into the Caribbean, Bahamas, Central America in the 70s and 80s. But the emphasis on killing changed, and this is a good thing, because people spent so much money trying to catch these fish, and you want to catch them, everybody wants to catch them all the time, and people realize that if you catch and kill them all, there's not going to be any left. So here's a start of real conservation taking place, and this spread throughout the Caribbean. Catch and release sport fishing generated millions and millions of dollars for a lot of developing countries. So this is a shot taken in Cuba. We were there last year filming another expedition in a marine park. This is the way the Caribbean has to change to compensate for the increase in population, the increased consumption, but also the increased amount of people looking for leisure time at the same time. I haven't seen reefs like this since I was a kid growing up in Jamaica. That's how impactful it was on me. And the fact that marine protected areas work, and fish sanctuaries work, and shark ecotourism in shark sanctuaries work, is the new trend. It's the new Caribbean sort of way of thinking, because all of these constituent governments are now, and the politicians in particular, are learning through experiences like our research, our education, and our conservation programs, that the value of a living animal, a living reef, a living rainforest is now more valuable than consuming those same items. I'm going to finish up on my favorite animals. You've seen the murals out here, the big sharks. I love to paint stuff that's big. I like to paint them on a big canvas because they are big animals. They're majestic, fast-moving, colorful, intelligent animals. So, for me, in rounding off the presentation today, I just want to say what a thrill it's been to be able to learn more about the blue marlin. You spend time with them, tease them, do whatever you want, catch and release, use them as studies, to swim with a tiger shark like Emma. This is a 15-foot-long tiger shark that comes to the same place every year in the Bahamas, and we can dive with it. This is an oceanic white-tip shark. 1% of this animal remains in the world. And, a lot of people ask, well, what can I do to help? What's the call to action here? And I tell them, the first thing you can do is you can learn about the animal. You can learn about its natural history, its biology. You can learn about its resource issues. You can share your knowledge with your friends and your family, and you can take action. You can support research. You can support conservation groups. You can support your local fishing club. There's lots of things you can do. That includes recycling. And of course, if you're a diver or a fisherman, and I'm sure some of you are, you obey the rules, the no fishing zones, the closed seasons, the slot sizes, because these are all based on science. And without the science, we're only guessing, okay? Have to tell you the story about Nolan. He was an 11-year-old boy from Alabama who would come to Cayman, and he loved painting. He'd come and sit there, little blonde guy, 10 years old, it's the first year he came, and he had this lovely southern accent, and he would paint, and his mum and dad would run off to go dive or shop or, and then they would come back and pick him up after 3 or 4 hours, and he'd done all these pencil drawings. He'd go around painting sharks and rooster fish and all this stuff. And over the years, he would come back every year. And then one year, I think he was 11 at the time, he said, "Mr. Harvey," and he had this lovely southern accent, can't impersonate it. He said, "I sold my paintings to my community." That's more like it. And I got $1,500. And I gave $500 to my church. And I got $1,000 here for you for your foundation. Now that is taking action. That really was. It was amazing. And he has been on some of our documentaries. He came up to SeaWorld Orlando and helped me paint a mural because he loves art. But we called one of the mako sharks in our tracking program, we called it Nolan. And of course, there's a halo effect with what he has done, what he's accomplished, and the influence he's had in Alabama with his friends and family and schoolmates and so on is what I'm after. That's what I want to reach a lot of people so that you talk to all your friends and tell them the story about marine life and learn more about it. Because individually, we can all make a difference, and it's our collective responsibility to conserve the marine environment and to maintain the biodiversity of this planet. Thank you very much.